On this episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, I'm chatting with Christian Thuesen from Merg Architects. Now, Christian grew up in Denmark, then moved into Paris as a teenager, then went to Austin, Texas to finish his high school, and then joined the US Marine Corps. And he was actually aboard a US naval ship during September 11th in 2001. So we talk about Christian's experience, as a Marine, moving back to Germany, studying architecture, and then obviously ending up here in Australia as one of the founding partners of Merg Architects. So Christian Thuesen, coming up. G'day there, you're listening to Pete Liston, and this is another episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast. And today I'm talking with Christian Thuesen from Merg Design and Construct. G'day, Christian, how are you?
Well, how are you, Peter?
Mate, I'm well. So normally I start this podcast off with asking probably an average Australian what average Australian town they grew up, and we talk about average Australian life. But mate, we're going to take a distinct tangent this morning. Whereabouts in the world did you grow up?
Yes, I grew up in Denmark in a small town named Thuesen. It's right north of Copenhagen, so quite
Yep.
a bit away from here.
Yeah. Tell us, what's it like, a kid? You've seen Aussie lifestyle. What's the difference between growing up as a kid over there versus a kid over here?
Well, a lot less surfing, I'll tell you that. It's too cold for that. Um, no, I think it's look, it's a great place to grow up. It's pretty quiet. It's a small country, lots of small towns, small villages. Um, when I was growing up, the nearest movie theater we had was Copenhagen, which was a 30-kilometer bike ride or a train ride. Um, so you spent most of the time out in nature, really, out in the forest and fishing in the lakes and things like that. So pretty relaxed, to be honest.
And you ended up with a bit of a different tangent in life. Tell us about how you ended up in the United States.
Yeah, so my father used to be a radar technician in the Danish army, and then got out of the army, went into sales for IBM. And that effectively, when I was about 16, he got a job in Paris, in France. And we spent about a year and a half there where I attended school. Then after that year and a half, he got an offer to go to the US, and we were
Hmm.
all pretty excited about that. So this mid 90s, a really good time to go to the US. So we ended up in Austin, Texas.
Oh, Austin.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a Texan fan, only because anyone who knows me knows that I'm a basketball tragic, and San Antonio Spurs, is my other love in life, and so also Texas Longhorns basketball, I think, comes out of Austin there as well. What was the culture shift like? Did you adapt well? Did you love it? What was it like?
Look, did I like it? Yeah, I loved it. Like I said, the US in the 90s was really cool. I remember my first day in high school, I was basically blown away that it was exactly like the movies, right? So this is
No
where
uniform?
what's that?
No uniform?
No uniform, no uniform, and lots of lockers and cliquey groups and the football guys and the cheerleaders, etc., etc. I remember really liking that it was exactly like in the movies. Um, and yeah, there was a lot larger school, obviously, than what I've been used to. So you have to think in Denmark, my class was 21 people.
Yeah, wow.
Um, and that school, well, and the Danish school had all in all about 400 people from first grade to 10th grade.
Yep.
And the US Net High School alone had 3,500 people.
Yeah. So how does a young Danish kid settle in? Do you become one of the jocks, or one of the cool kids, or one of the not cool kids, or are you a novelty?
At the time, yeah, I was one of three internationals, and the other two,
3 out of 3,500.
yep, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And the other two actually became my best friends. Andre is
Yeah.
Brazilian, Nathan is Swiss. But no, look, uh, I kind of just hung out with everyone. You want I didn't really go to any of the football games and that, but still got invited to the football parties, and I didn't really hang out with uh, well, the nerds that just so to speak, but still went and hung out with them. So I was kind of just everywhere.
So 16, you're over there with your parents. What's Austin like as a city? I've never actually been there, but it's supposed to be like, what is it, a little bit of blue and a sea of red. A very forward thinking. This would have been before the tech boom and it became like the second San Francisco in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. So when we moved there, I think Austin had about 800,000 people or 700,000. So it was quite small,
Hmm.
but an absolutely lovely place. Downtown was booming. I think at the time they had the most bars per capita in the world. So it was live music. Sixth Street was one of the key areas to go on a Friday night, basically on any night. And they really had a good balance between, you know, Texan culture,
Hmm.
i.e., cowboy boots and cowboy hats, and just the relaxed atmosphere of blues music, metal music, whatever you
Yeah.
liked, and everyone's pretty open. Like already at that time, it was quite diverse. So the LGBT community was no one really cared.
Yep.
It was definitely a very blue dot in a very big ocean of red.
Big,
Um,
big red state. Yeah.
yeah, but at the time, like the rest of the state didn't really care either. Everyone was
Yeah.
just happy to be there and proud Texans, effectively.
And mate, what led you into the U.S. Marine Corps?
Well, so I'd finished high school, so this is early '99, and I started dabbling with a bit of biochemistry at uni, and it was just not really for me. And I ended up spending a bit more time just working at restaurants and partying and things like that. And
Hmm.
and uh, it,
Classic teenage stuff.
yeah,
That's what we all do.
exactly. And it was really my father had a sit down one time with me and basically said, look, the Danish army kind of sorted me out, um, and just kind of left it at that. Um, and then without thinking about it too much, I went to the recruiting office and signed up.
Sign up.
That
And just with U.S. Marine Corps, like it's like a little military within itself. It's got its own air fleet. It's got its own, armored capabilities.
yeah.
What does that happen at recruiting? You're like, hey, do you want to go the infantry? You want to fly? You want to go logistics? Where did your pathway there lead?
Well, it's so they don't necessarily start. Well, first of all, they were very surprised that I just walked in and said, "Sign me up,"
Yeah,
and they
they
said, "Okay,
literally
yeah,
are committed. Not like, hey, what can I have an info? Can I get a pamphlet and read through it? It's like, okay, sign me up.
yeah." I had read a little bit about it. The only thing I knew was I look, I'd had a chat with a guy that used to be in the army, and he was really sad about not being able to make it into the Marine Corps. I forgot what the reason was, but he wasn't. So I just
And that
thought,
was
look,
enough for you.
yeah, exactly. That was enough for me to say, okay, so it's obviously a bit harder to get into that. I don't want to spend my life thinking about the what if scenario. Um, so that's actually why I walked straight into the U.S. Marine Corps recruiting office and not one of the other ones. Um, and then it was less about what do you want to do. It was more about you've come to the right place. Now take a test so we can figure out what it is we want you to do. Um, so you basically take an ASVAB test, which is basically there's a bit of math and reading and writing and things like that.
Yep.
And it was effectively if you scored quite low, um, it would be infantry. If you scored quite high, you could obviously choose if you wanted to go infantry or not. But I scored quite high, and they said, look, uh, we'd allocate you to an engineering MLS, so military
Yep.
occupational specialty. So that's what I was allocated to.
And look, I've got a very uneducated understanding of the Marine Corps. outside of things like Full Metal Jacket and USA movies. Did you go to Paris Island? Does everyone go to Paris Island?
No. So basically, the US, they split the recruiting offices up. So anything that's East Coast goes to Paris Island, and
Yep,
anything that's West Coast, they go to San Diego. So the Marine Corps.
San Diego.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now I'm not sure why Texas falls under San Diego, but it does. So I went to San Diego.
And you went in as enlisted.
I went in as solicited. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What's boot camp like? What is it? What's the experience like? Is it just like every military around the world? Is it? Do you think it's tougher than the Army or Navy Air Force, or probably also
Uh,
Navy Air Force?
Look, everyone's gonna say that theirs is the toughest. All I can say is it's full on, and Full Metal
Yeah,
Jacket paints a decent picture of it, but it's not one drill instructor. You have three or four. And
yeah.
obviously, because I had an accent, I was one of the ones that got singled out quite quickly. So
What are you doing here?
yeah,
What are you doing in
exactly.
my army, European man?
Well, yeah, I was the Russian spy. So
Anything non-American is a Russian spy, yeah?
yeah, well, back then it was all about killing commies and Russian spies and that sort of
Yeah.
thing, because it was still, it was still the Cold War mindset, let's say.
And how do you feel now? Like, and this question always interests me. Like for people as jet around the world and live in different places. I've been to many different places in the world, but I haven't lived in many different places. Do you feel American now, like part of the U.S. military? Do you still feel European? Do you feel like a global citizen, or you just doing this for you?
I don't feel American at all.
Yep.
Um, I do feel more Danish than I feel American, but I think you find a place where, and for me that was Australia. So it took a while to get here, but uh, you effectively find a place where you are happy and that you feel part of, right?
Yep.
So I was for a while, admittedly, a bit lost in terms of I didn't really know where home was
Yep.
because I hadn't made my own home. And it wasn't until really Australia that I felt like this is home. This is me.
When you're in the U.S. Marine Corps, like you sign up to do whatever needs to be done and put your life on the line if required for the United States and the whims of its government, which is an interesting time here on the 3rd of March as I'm recording this, less than
Yes.
a few days after the Iran incursion or airstrikes. Did you go overseas with the Marine Corps? Mid 90s, I don't believe there would have been too much large scale conflict at that time, was there?
Well, I went in at the end of 1999.
Okay, you're right, right. So you're not far off the Afghanistan. Were you
Exactly.
in during September 11th?
I was on a ship on the USS Kearsarge in the Mediterranean when 2001 happened.
Tell us about that, mate. What was that like on a US warship in when that incident occurred?
Well, it was pretty surreal to be honest. So, like you said, the US hadn't really had any major conflicts at the time. Now, in already in boot camp, they said, look, about every 10 years something happens, and we don't
Yeah.
know why, but it's about every 10 years. So that time is coming up, so be prepared that something might happen.
So Gulf War One, probably 92, 93 for a few years there, and then we're in
Exactly.
that little lull before the Afghanistan, Al Qaeda strikes, all that.
Exactly. So basically, I was on float for about a year, so on floats on the ship. So you're assigned to a ship as part of the Marine Corps division there. So within those carrier groups, there's one ship that has all the helicopters. They have a some platoons of Marines that basically are assigned to that ship and then just follow it around um, to be able to um, rapid insert anywhere if there are any issues.
Yep.
So come 2001, I think we had been on the boat for about 7 months, 6 months. So we're coming up to the end of we'll call it the cruise, because it was a 9 month ordeal. And and suddenly, all communication was basically shut. I'd seen on TV that something was happening in New York, that there were some explosions, and then basically the ship went into combat mode.
Yep.
There wasn't really much in terms of announcement of what was happening, because at the time no one knew what was happening, who was
But there's a distinct
doing it.
energy shift. Everyone's like, game on, something's happened.
Yes. Well, it was for most of us, there was a bit of confusion because we couldn't really identify what had happened, because the only outlet that we had at the time was just a bit of TV and then whatever the officers were telling us. But even the officers didn't really know at that point in time. But they did know that it was something serious, so all external communication shut off. And then there was a bit of a briefing in terms of an increase in the DEFCON levels. So they effectively packed out the battle flag and raised that onto the ship. Now, this is quite
So
important.
just pick that moment
Yeah,
there. There's a battle flag,
yeah,
and it's a distinct moment that we are now postured for warlike operations when that flag goes up.
that is correct. That's correct. So,
Okay.
when you have military ships, they cannot go straight to one point. They basically have to do a zigzag. I think that's something to do with international laws. As
Yep.
soon as that battle flag goes up, they can do what they need to do in
V line,
international
just go
waters.
straight to the point.
Yeah, and it's a lot larger than the regular flag. It's absolutely huge.
And are you part of again, excuse my ignorance, a fleet at the moment?
Yeah,
Or is
yeah.
it one ship?
No, 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 no. It's a fleet. So it's got some destroyers in there. It had I think it was the Ronald Reagan was there, like one of the big airplane carriers. Um, some submarines. I think there are about 7 or 8 ships altogether. So it's quite a force that's out there.
It's funny, like my like again, a humble experience is I was at Kandahar airfield during Afghanistan for a little while, and just seeing the U.S. war machine in operation. Seeing F-16 and Ospreys and F-18 just one after the other, and A-10s just every 30 seconds, another one taking off. It is a significant and impressive machine.
Yep.
So I can't imagine what that would have been like as you step into war footing, and even just the banter with the lads, the lads and girls down, whatever you call it, downstairs. It must have just like, right, what's going on? Game on. Do you still do what I call hoorah?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Um, I don't do it anymore, obviously, but no, no. Look, you'd have a briefing, and then it's basically, let's go kick some ass, and then you're like, hoorah, and
Just
let's
do the
do it.
job.
Yeah, and then you
Do the
just
job.
switch into job mode. You just need to
Yeah.
do what needs to get done.
So, a couple of years in the Marine Corps. When did you find? I say, look, basically, did the ship? Okay, let's just wrap up this situation first. What happened in that moment? Did the ship go into combat mode, or were you sort of held back, or because you're in the Mediterranean, not that far away?
Yeah, so we effectively went straight up to the Israeli coast, more or less, and
Yep.
assisted in some of those operations from there.
So, mate, you ended up in Japan, Okinawa.
Yeah, yeah. So
There is there's like a division of Marine out there. There's a lot of people out there.
yeah, so normally, when you're in the Marines, you serve a minimum of 4 years.
Hmm.
Um, the first year, most of the first year is training on whatever coast you're on. So for me, it was
Yep.
the West Coast, so it's San Diego, then Camp Pendleton, you do Marine Corps combat training, etc., etc. Then you either stay there or you get sent to the East Coast, and that's where the second division is. So the Marine Corps
Yep.
is made up of 3 divisions, basically. First division, West Coast, second division, East Coast, and then the third division is Okinawa.
Yep.
and then you rotate between the three.
Yep.
So what's very often is your last rotation will be to third division out in Okinawa. So in Okinawa you have different bases. So you have the infantry, they normally go up to Camp Schwab, was the very north of the island. Um,
Hmm.
I was quite lucky to be on Camp Foster, which is next to Camp Kadena, which is the Air Force, which is right outside the largest city on the island, which is Naha.
Mm.
And that's a good thing because that means whenever you have a bit of time on the weekend, you get to go out into town, into Naha, and experience the culture. If you're
Yep.
up north, it's mostly jungle. You do jungle warfare training up there. It's fairly unpleasant.
When do you start getting the itch that the Marine Corps, fun for a time, but it's not your career path?
It was actually in Okinawa. Um, when I was out exploring the culture and basically spending time with friends there, there was a lot of downtime. But the downtime was not in the base anymore. It was actually in the city. Um, and it just occurred to me that it was more and more just about Groundhog Day, right?
Mm.
So um, I think what most civilians don't appreciate is you can you can see all this stuff that happens in the movies, but 95% of the time you're sitting and doing drill runs or
Yep.
cleaning
Hurry up and
things
wait.
or doing you're just waiting. It's incredibly
Yep.
boring and very monotonous. And
Because you're young too. Like what are you, like 22 at this stage?
yeah, 22, 22.
22. So you've still got a whole life ahead. Um, so you get out. Yeah, it's time for a change. Back to Europe. How did you feel? Did Europe feel like coming home after the spending so much time in the States?
Well, I didn't feel like coming home, right? So basically when I got out 2003, end of 2003, early 2004, I knew I just needed to go back to Europe.
Yep.
Um, and but I didn't want to go back to Denmark.
Mm.
So I had met a German girl as it goes, and basically um, went there. So I went to southern Germany, um, and basically started my new life there.
Yep. And what was it that so I see from those you a bit of time in Stuttgart, not far from Munich, down there. Um, you sprechen Deutsch, and I don't speak any German. That's all I've got.
Yes, very, very well. When I arrived there, it was fairly broken. In Denmark, you do have to learn German, but it's not a lot, right? Um, and so really the first thing I had to do was um, figure out what I wanted to do, number one.
Mm.
Number two, I found out that anything that I wanted to do had to involve intensive German courses because as
Okay.
much as the Germans speak English, most things are not in English, and not all of them speak English very well.
It was there because does your Marine Corps service entitle you to paid study after the Marine Corps wherever you are in the world, or is that only a United States thing?
No, so what you're referring to is the GI Bill. Now, I don't know how much it is now, but one of the good things is when you sign up, there is basically well, back then, I don't know how much it is now, but there was a $50,000 kickback basically for if you were to attend schooling, any type of schooling.
Yep.
Whilst you're in, you can then basically supercharge that and put a little bit of money on the side. Uh, that basically gets doubled. So anything that you put in gets doubled and goes towards that GI Bill. So
Oh wow, yeah.
I had about I think 70K. Now activating that outside of the US, that became a problem in itself. Um, and I was very fortunate that my university were very supportive of this.
Yep.
So they gave me all the paperwork. They translated entire courses et cetera, to help me out. And in the end, basically, the Technical University of Munich got registered as one of the places um, uh, where you can redeem that GI Bill.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years, I was able to. Yeah.
So, mate, this is the start of your next big journey. I don't want to say grown-up journey because your Marine Corps experience is certainly a grown-up experience, but this is the next part of your professional career in terms of why architecture and what took you down that path.
Well, when I was in the Marine Corps, one of the things that I loved in terms of engineering was when you get some odd job that you really have to think about how to resolve. Um, and that led me down the whole path of engineering. And one of the things why I also chose Germany was not just a girl, it was also, well, Germany, engineering, eh,
Classic, yeah.
yeah, could be good, could
100.
be good. Um, so when I applied for the university there and architecture specifically, it was effectively because I did like the creative side. I did like to design things. Um, and in Germany, the way it works is you are effectively an engineer first and architect second. So back
Is that just
then,
part of the German mindset,
yes,
of having the detail, the process, the systems,
yeah,
and so you get that perfect, and then you express the beauty over the top of something that works well?
yeah, it's effectively the way they see it is um, the functionality is equally as important as the design.
Mm.
And to understand functionality, it's not just how a space works, it's how things are built. So you effectively, the first 2 years, you don't design much. You effectively learn more about structural engineering, the maths behind this whole thing. You learn how to draw, even though you can
Yeah.
draw, they teach you how to draw. They spend a lot of time with you and you go on trips, etc. Just learning how to draw perspectives correctly, etc. So they're conditioning your mind to be able to express it.
By draw, do you mean like sketch? Like I'll go out and sit on a chair and
Yeah,
look at a bridge and I'll sketch the
yeah, yeah,
bridge?
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And I think that was one of the best parts of that entire curricula was you effectively would go to like Italy, for example. We went to Siena for 2 weeks and effectively just sat down and sketched all day. And
So good, man.
it was absolutely excellent, absolutely excellent. And you'd
I'm
have
just
these sketch sessions every single week, and they're mandatory, right? So
I'm just sitting here thinking about like just the broad cultural shifts, from growing up small town Denmark into the all that is America, and you can't, I guess, get a more quintessential experience than joining U.S. Marine Corps.
mm,
And then back into Europe, and again that quintessential, I feel German European experience of the details, getting everything functionality. Like I've got a BMW car, mate, and it, it just amazes me how smart it is and
mm,
how just everything works like beautifully.
yeah.
And but that's reputation and history, and so where are you feeling your place in the world is yet? Are you settled back in Europe, or you still got that hunger to be somewhere else?
At the time, so are you talking about now or back then?
No, back then, back then.
Back
So
then.
you're sort of getting through your degree, you're sort of onto this next bit of a shift. Where are you feeling inside yourself about where you want to be?
Well, at the time, I definitely felt like I was going in the right direction.
Yep.
Um, and the German culture, etc. It does have its similarities to Scandinavia, obviously, because Scandinavia is also Germanic in nature. So so a lot of the mentality, etc., is similar, but
Yep.
not quite the same. So I found friends there, started working, etc. But there was an aspect that was missing. There was a cultural aspect that was missing. And one of the biggest aspects was really to be frank. So something like humor. Um, the German humor is very specific. Um, it's a bit hard to understand. And the way people talk to each other is it's quite old-fashioned.
Yep.
And that was some of the things, so really culturally, where I didn't quite feel like I fitted in. Um, and the Germans, they also know that, obviously. And once you don't fit in, well, you don't fit in. They
Like
can
an
be a
inner
bit
circle
cold.
had to be there.
Yeah, they can be a
Yeah.
bit cold about that stuff. Um, but all in all, it was a great experience. But
But what do you know of Australia back then? Because you're sort of late 20s. You got an architectural degree. You've got a profession under your belt. What do you know about Australia, and what pricks your interest to come and check us out?
um, the answer is pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
Um, I Australia hadn't really been on my radar. So in Europe, well, at least at the time, Australia was so far away and tickets were so expensive, um, that it just never really came to mind.
Mm.
Um, but at that,
Well, USA is always so predominant and so it's so pervasive in terms of its culture across everything. That we are a bit of an afterthought down in the bottom corner there.
exactly, and if something as simple as TV, for example, you have neighbors, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
neighbors were playing in the 90s everywhere. Um, but most of it's American TV shows or uh, uh, European TV shows, British TV shows. You don't really see much of Australian, or even if you see Australian, you don't actually hear that it's Australian. You think it's probably just an awkward British show or something.
With a
Um,
funny accent.
yeah, exactly. So I at the time I didn't really think much about Australia. It really only came up when I knew that Germany was not the place for me.
Mm.
um, I needed to go out and figure something else out. So one thing though that I didn't know was I did not want to learn another language from scratch. It takes a lot of time and integration, etc. So really it came down to go back to the US, which I didn't want to do, go to Canada, which is way too cold,
Yeah.
uh, go to the UK, which at the time was, you know, I think I probably would have done okay there, but they were having a bit of a crisis, which is still there in terms of affordability. So when you
Yep.
looked at what an architect would earn and where I could live and how I could live, just wasn't really feasible going from Germany to something that's even worse. It had to be in something better. And then there was Australia. Uh, now I didn't really know anything about Australia, but my father had been here once because I actually have relatives that live here in Australia from my grandfather's brother's side that had settled here back in the 50s. And he said, "Well, what about Australia? It's a lovely place. I went there once. It's far away, but if you can get over the fact that it being far away, um, I think it's quite lovely." And I did lots of research. Um, and effectively applied for a visa 189, which is a point system. So you have to
Yep.
take a bunch of tests and things and cost a bunch of money. But I wanted to make sure that when I arrive in Australia, that I wouldn't be on a sponsor visa. I didn't want
Yeah.
anyone to be um, in charge of my destiny, let's say. I needed to do that for myself. So it took 2 years to get the visa, um, and then I moved here. So I hadn't been here, but I was hoping for the best.
Yeah. And where's the first spot you landed?
It was Sydney. Um,
Sydney.
yeah, and the reason why it was Sydney, I was actually initially looking at Perth, but there were no jobs in Perth at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was Sydney and Melbourne, and Sydney at the time just had the most architectural jobs.
Yep.
It was right when infrastructure was starting to become a thing here too.
This might sound a bit funny, but was it a nice day when you landed? Was the weather nice? Like did you land up in summertime and go, straight look at the harbour, or what season did you turn up in?
I arrived October 1st, 2014, and it was a beautiful day, Pete. It was a beautiful day. We flew in. Um, don't think I'd slept for 2 weeks or something like that, just trying to get everything ready. And I brought my dog with me, etc., which is a whole other can of worms. But
So,
but it was absolutely a beautiful day, and the Airbnb that I'd gotten was up north, close to the beach. Um, yeah, it was fantastic. Couldn't have asked for anything better.
right, mate. Let's move the conversation across to Merge. Okay. So you've gone around the world and back again. You've ended up in Sydney. You've come, fully stocked up, with all your credentials and technical skills in your pocket. How do you lead into this now entrepreneurial moment of saying, "Hey, I've done my corporate." Talk us through those next few years of corporate work, and then ultimately end up in why Merge.
Sure. Um, well, when I arrived, I went straight into a large um, architectural corporate space, um, working on some large commercial buildings in Sydney. Um, and I effectively had to start from scratch. So I had been a project architect in Germany. I'd worked my
Mhm.
way up, led projects there. But when I
Were those
arrived,
skills really transferable?
they were absolutely transferable. But interestingly enough, it wasn't seen as being transferable. So they basically, I got started off at the bottom next to a student, more or less, when it was here. But it everyone then realizes that you know what you're doing, and then you work your way up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Um, Now, my main drive at the time was I had come from a small residential sector, small commercial sector. Now I was in larger commercial works, moving into major projects. Um, and it was really for me was the challenge of complexity. So how complicated can it get effectively? And
Mm.
I was almost driven by that complexity. Um, So I effectively ended up working on Sydney Light Rail, leading that through construction from the architectural side, and then a fair few years on Sydney Metro and Auckland Light Rail. Uh,
Where was the light? I know there was. It took a long time to get light rail through. This is the first bit between Circular Quay out to Randwick Kingsford.
yeah, that's it. That's it. That's
Yep.
it.
And what kind of things were you working on? Like stations, tunnels, tracks? How does it work?
All of it. So as the lead architect, what you do is you work on all the architectural components with the builder.
Mhm.
And so that means for light rail, it was substations, depots, the line itself, the stops, um, some of the tunneling up in Moore Park. And so you basically work across the entire thing, and you oversee a lot of the landscape architecture also in terms of the integration.
Does the this might sound a bit funny. When can concurrent activity start? Like, because I imagine if you wait for the full design to be finished, it's going to take a long time for the design to be finished. But obviously, you've got to know what you're going to build. But when's the opportunity to start doing practical things and start getting things moving whilst the design process is still maturing?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Now, for large infrastructure works, the way it works is there is a reference design that gets released.
Yep.
Um, that is not really known to the public. Um, that reference design effectively designs the skeleton, let's say, of how not just how these things could look like, but um, you have all your consultants involved, so how it operates, etc., etc. That then goes to government,
Hmm.
that then either signs it off or it gets put onto the shelf again. So that's what, for example, happened with high-speed rail. Also, they've had
Exactly.
several reference designs shelved, a new one shelved. But at some stage, once it gets signed off, that reference design gets let out to the public as a public tender, and then the consortia can bid on it. The
Got it.
consortia, they take that reference design, build on that reference design, and tender on that design.
Mm-hmm.
The selected consortia then continues designing that aspect. Now, for light rail, whilst you're designing in terms of architecture, substations, depots, etc., while the builder is already out digging up the streets, tunneling what they need to tunnel. So they're called early works. So basically the preparation for the architectural works. So those packages, they start, and that's when you really start getting into the detail of the reference design.
Because it's almost a little bit fractal. So you do a bit at the start. You're like, right, we get that signed off.
Yep,
Now we can go a bit deeper. So we nest in and we go a bit deeper in areas,
yep,
get things moving along. And it's like, well, now we can go deeper again.
yep,
Now we're talking a little while ago about the Western Sydney, the new Western Sydney airport.
yep,
Obviously the line, they know where the line's going, they know
yep,
where the stations are going, but
yep,
maybe they don't know where all the spots of all the trees are going to be planted yet, or where the park benches are going to go on the stations or something like that.
yep.
So it keeps nesting down and down and
Right.
down to keep that concurrent activity moving.
Yep. That's it. That's it. And one of the last things that go in are really things like the bench positioning. But there is a lot of thought behind those things because they have to be accessible and they have to be in the right places and not dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. So there's still a lot of thought process that goes into it, but it's such a small component that is also able to be moved quite easily
Mm.
that you prioritize the components that are not easy to move. For example, a platform. Once you've concreted in a platform, that platform's not going anywhere. Um, so it's really a game of priorities, to be honest.
Do you feel that your German training in particular, 'cause as soon as I hear that, I think about the sort of functionality of process and the effect that, the outcome that this thing
Mm,
needs to deliver. Do you feel that that German training is coming out in the sense of your work at the moment?
absolutely, 100%. And that's the successes I've had with this. I can really say it's one of the results of that German education. Military also, obviously, but the the way that you're thought to think about these issues and go about them, that has been absolutely crucial in terms of developing methods and understanding what gets built when, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So you've done a few years now in this large corporate, big infrastructure, design space. When does Merg start popping up on your radar?
Well, Merge started popping up after I had together with some friends who had collaborated in the founding of an architectural studio.
Yep.
At the time, I knew that I could not go back to the corporate world,
Yeah.
um, and I did not want to work on major projects anymore. They're too long and they're really quite intense for a very long time, and a lot of bureaucracy, obviously. Um, Now, what with that company, the main focus really became commercial builds, larger commercial builds, and the studio was growing quite rapidly. And I found myself kind of in the same spot where, well, it's not really taking me to where I want to be. Great bunch of people to work with, and the projects were good. It was just not the scale that I wanted to be with. I wanted to be more
Yep.
in touch with the clients themselves.
It's a little bit like going back to your early roots of what you were doing.
Well, it's absolutely that. So back in the early days, the the nicest things were to communicate with the client and that the client really care about the outcome because it's deeply personal to them. They'll either live with it or use it. But as obviously you get up the ladder and it turns into more of government or commercial, etc., the clients that you deal with, they want the function, but they don't really care about any of the feeling stuff,
Yeah.
and a lot of it becomes just a spreadsheet exercise and cost and cost and cost, etc. So I wanted to get back to that feeling that I had in the beginning of actually making people um, like the spaces and people be excited about these spaces.
It feels to me like that is one of the core passions of architecture and the subtle joys that you can have from this career is designing something that is really beautiful and has, a physical and emotional effect on the final user.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that just gets strengthened over time when if it becomes more of a problem-solving exercise, which effectively it does, the larger the project becomes, the architect is not there to, um, uh, let's say, to make excellent spaces necessarily.
Mm.
This is going to be controversial, but this is my opinion. They are there basically to manage the whole thing, to make sure um, that there is an overview. There's lots of problem solving because you just have problems all the time and you're just trying to problem solve. The better you can problem solve, the better you can be one of the project architects on those.
So, I mean, just on that note, if I can grab
Hmm,
problem solving, are you trying to design your way through a problem or engineer your way through a problem or both?
both. So effectively you're put in a room where you have some sort of issue that comes up. You try to design your way out of it, but you need the engineer's input. And it's about challenging the engineer, challenging the builder, challenging everyone. Now, challenging is that's fun, but when it comes to a level where everyone is effectively challenging you,
Yeah.
then it becomes a different beast altogether.
Can I just pick on that moment
Mm.
for a little bit? The the challenge from the trade's perspective, the person who actually has to put the nail in the wall and actually build this design versus the engineer versus the designer, and how that little triumvirate works between grand idea versus the builder who's like, dude, this is not going to work.
Yeah. Well, it really depends on the skill that you're working on, right? So if we start with a large scale builder, they're effectively um, bit of a big bulldozer because
Yep.
they don't really care about the design. They just have to build it and they have to build it to a certain price. So all the pressure of that build gets put onto the architect to somehow um, get that build through, but they don't really want the architect involved.
Yep.
So that's with a large builder. Now with the smaller builders, i.e. myself included, where you see challenges is if an architect is drawing wild forms and shapes and have sold a client on something that is just incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And then it's unfortunately the builder's role to say, first of all, it's really hard to build. Second of all, I'm sorry, it's not going to look like that.
What's it called? That big cantilever. It looks great, but it's just gonna break.
Exactly, exactly. So it's going to be this and this thick, and it's going to cost the client so and so much extra. And effectively wrapping all that up into one, that was one of the reasons why Merge came together. Because I was working with as a project manager and a builder, um, that was no bullshit, said it the way it was, and we could have an open conversation about these things. So one of the things that I always liked to do was um, to actually talk to the trades and hear what their opinion was. Because just like anything else, if this guy has been doing gyprocking for 20 years, what am I going to tell him as an architect in terms of gyprocking that he doesn't know? Nothing. You got to
He just,
listen to
I
that
just
guy.
want to put a nice little curve through there, and he's like, dude, this just doesn't work like
Exactly.
that.
But you can say I like a curve, and then he said, well, we can build it like this and this. But if you want it to look like this, you need to do this and this and this, and it's going to be an additional cost. And then you get to make a decision on it, right? So you're not, and that was one of the main gripes that I always had with, um, honestly, architects in general is if they try and force something onto a trade where the trade is already saying this is not going to end well, and the architects say, well, I know better.
Yeah.
And that is always a recipe for disaster. But that is a job opening, right? So, and that's what Merge is all about. It's having that nice tight network of trades, and and I know these guys, and I get to talk to these guys and collaborate with them, and they tell me if it's shit, and I tell them if it's shit, and then we come up with something together.
And ultimately, the client wins rather than ego wins, pushing through here.
That's right.
Mate, can I ask you a little bit about your relationship with your business partner
Yep.
and how pivotal that was in making Merge happen? Because for me, now I'm very lucky that I started businesses with one of my Duntering classmates, Matt Mosley. I can talk about him because he will never listen to this pod. He would never stoop so low as to actually listen to me voluntarily. But without him, I don't think I would be successful at all because we are both very different, and the two of us is worth far more than what it's like 1+1 = 3. Whereas I just don't think I could run a business by myself, to be honest. What's the relationship between you two like, and the difference doing it alone versus doing it with a partner?
Oh, it's very similar to what you were describing. I haven't known Phil for many, many years. We've known each other for a couple of years, but basically from day one on site, we saw eye to eye.
Yeah,
Um, and and one of the things that I appreciated, and still appreciate, is that you challenge and you talk about things.
mm.
Um, so him being a builder, he would listen to what I effectively wanted in terms of design, and we'd come up with a solution together. He wouldn't just shut it down. We'd actually have a conversation about it. But then in terms of the other way, he wasn't being a stubborn builder. He'd try to come up with a solution, but also be straightforward and say it doesn't work. And I think that dynamic, and there are some people out there that are saying, this is again going to be a bit controversial, but they're saying, I can design and build. No, you can't. I can tell you right now, you cannot. If you're a good designer, um, yes, you can detail well and do all that stuff, but you will not understand the full scope of a build. You need a builder. That's why we have builders. And as a builder, I'm a great designer. No, you're not.
Yeah.
It does, because it's two different brain halves that you have to use. And it's only if you have those open conversations and you get to put them together that you can get really good results. Um, so without Phil, there would be no Merge. Absolutely not.
So tell us about what are the kind of projects you're working on, like literally right now, designing and building.
Yeah, so one of the best things about the designing and building is we don't necessarily have to design everything. And so one of the things that I always wanted to do also is be able to act as an executive architect. Now, what that means is you have an architect that has a concept or ideas, etc., that puts things on paper, but has issues basically building that. All right, so I then step in, I can manage the design, and we develop the details together, and I make sure it gets built in a certain way, right? Um, and two of those projects we have now where the architects are not ourselves, someone else, and they are alterations of attic spaces effectively. So small projects. Um, they had a design vision, and we've then spoken about how we can actually achieve it, got the trades together, and that's what we're building now.
Yeah.
We're doing some stuff out with Parramatta Powerhouse and exhibition halls, etc. So it's not necessarily we need to design and construct everything. We can do construct only, but it's really just getting a good outcome for the client at a decent price. And the reason why I've chosen those smaller projects, that's um, again in terms of clientele, absolutely. But when you are a small company in the building industry, your insurance is only up until so much, right?
Yeah.
So we have
This
to,
is your home builder's warranties
yes,
and all
exactly,
of these you've got to put in.
exactly.
Just on that note, how much of a constraint, or because I talk to tradies all the time, how much of a constraint or red tape is that on your ability to grow the business? Or do you see it as being an appropriate form of protection for the consumer?
Honestly, I think it's appropriate. I think it's
Mm.
appropriate. I think if we were to step in and do a $10 million build right now, we do it? Yeah, we could probably do it.
Yep.
But there is a lot of risk. So if you're not absolutely 100% that you could do it and you just take it because the money might be good, you can end up in a lot of trouble.
In a lot of trouble. And I think the way it works with home builders warranty is the more you do, the more mature, the more you grow,
That's it.
your warranty grows with you.
Yep.
So you sort of get runs on the board and you prove your competence, and then up you go. Is that correct?
That's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But that's not so in terms of commercial builds, for example, or retail, so we do some of those things too. And that
Yeah.
then works a little bit differently, because they're more internal fit outs, etc. So it's not as risky. It's really when it comes to the residences, like residential sector, that's where there's a lot of risk. So I absolutely understand what the government has had to step in. And there are a lot
And
of cowboys out there.
and look, too many real people with real families have just got burned. And this is just the cowboys out there have just ripped
Yep.
too many people, and real families suffer if this doesn't happen. So,
Well, that's it. That's it.
mate, I'm just going to wrap up on a bit of a side note. You and I are both metalheads. How did you find the metal scene coming from, Europe, South Germany, into Sydney? I don't imagine it quite cuts it.
We've got a lot to learn here. The metalheads in German is, I think, second to none.
Yeah.
But over the past years, I have been very positively, I've positively seen a growth in metal gigs and bands coming down here. Like when I first started out, it was really, you didn't see much of the larger bands, a couple of the smaller bands, but I don't know. Australia's become a popular place to go now, so I could go to a gig every month if I really wanted to.
Yeah, and look, I'm not too much into the metal scene, but I think Melbourne's got a better metal band culture, in terms of anyway, I don't, mate. I'm still trapped in the mid '90s world of, Faith No More and Tool. I went and saw Tool. Play. I'm obsessed by the song "Invincible" by Tool. I know, I love it. I don't know if the lyrics is
Well,
the lyrics,
no, so I'm a little bit heavier than that, Pete. But the good news is they're all forming back up. They're all touring, and they'll be in Australia soon, whatever band it is, if the lead singer's not dead, that is.
mate. Christian, just last but not least, do you feel home traveling the world?
Yes. Like Australia now has become my not just my home, but it's first time in many, many years when I travel abroad. I miss Australia. I miss home.
Mm.
And that is something that cannot be understated. And I think a lot of people take that for granted. That, you know, when you say the word, I'm gonna go home, you're gonna go home to your parents or whatever country it is. Um, it's when you don't have that, it actually is a big part of you that's missing. So when you get
Yeah.
that back, it's it's great.
And as a native-born Australian, that makes me feel like really proud of our place and our culture and our community. And like I'm to be honest, there's a lot of talk about immigration at the moment. I'm actually all for immigration. I think immigration is a great thing, not only for the diversity of food that I get to go and eat, but anyone from wherever you are in the world, if you're prepared to come here and work hard and contribute to the values and contribute to the nation, that's what we've been built on for the last you know well, at least the last 200 years, let alone, the thousands of years before that. So, mate, I just love it that you feel home here. And, part of what we want to do in the veteran business community is, distinctly you've come from a different place and you've served with a different military. But we want to, honour and acknowledge that service because it's about Australians who have served. And that's who you are now, mate, one of us.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. And thanks for inviting me in. It's really been great.
Well, mate, let's wrap it there. Thanks for the pathway and the journey around the world and back again. And we're going to put all the details. It's Merg, Mike Echo Romeo Golf.au. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Go check it out. But we'll have all of the details in the show notes. And Mate, I'd love. Can you forward me? Do you have a little bit of a portfolio that you can send through to me so we can put it in and put some links on the
Yeah,
kind of work
absolutely.
that you're doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Do that.
flick it across, and we'd love to put it out there and post it. Rightio, mate. Let's have a wrap there. I really appreciate you jumping in and having a chat today.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Thanks for the invite.
Done. Rightio, let's hold it there. Good yarn today with Christian Thuesen from Merg Architects. So take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Out.